If you are having images like this, we can save a good amount of time in removing the background with the help of this technique, which we are going to discuss today. Hi friends, welcome back to Dexplorion. If you are new here on this channel, I'm Didi and I'm all about designing in Photoshop and sharing the process with you. And in the process, we will discuss different tools, techniques and tips and tricks which will improve your workflow and level up your graphic design game. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Before starting with the technique itself, let's try to understand the technique and discuss some of the possible scenarios where we can use it. And like any other selection techniques, it has its flaws, and knowing them beforehand can save us a lot of time and effort, and we can use it in a proper way. In our last video, we used the technique of making the selection based on color channels in an image, but today we will be making the selection based on a particular color in an image. We'll be selecting the color in the background and remove that to isolate our subject. It's an amazing technique and it's very fast and easy way of removing the background. But there's a catch. The scope of you using this technique is very limited, and why I am saying that, let's understand with an image. Have a look at our first image. If you can see here, the first thing we will observe is the plain solid white background, no textures, no gradient, nothing. This, you can say, is the most ideal background for this technique. Of course, colors can be different. And the second thing, the subject, that is the leaf, is in perfect focus. The edges are sharp and crisp, and there's a clear distinction between the subject and the background in terms of color. Another of the ideal situation. Let us now go into Photoshop and apply the technique. Keeping the layer selected, we go to select menu and click on color range. This window will open. Make sure sample color is selected. We'll click on this icon here and click once on the background to take the sample. Here in the preview window, you can see that our subject is black and the background is white. Areas that are white will show up and the black areas will be hidden, and our leaf here is black. But we don't want that. We want just the opposite, so we'll click the checkbox here to invert the selection. Now we click on this icon to add our selection, and by watching at the preview, click on the areas which are left out. We can also play with this fuzziness slider here. This basically determines the tolerance of the color. In this case, if we make it 0, this will happen because though we see green color of the leaf only, but there is little bit of green cast on the neighboring areas which we cannot see through our naked eyes. And since we brought down the value to 0, we made it more tolerant, and so it is selecting all the greens in the image. So we have to bring it up to a point so that it selects the only shade of green we want. If you increase it more, you will see that some shades of green on the leaf are also getting left out. So we have to find out that sweet spot. I think 30 will be okay in this case. Hit OK, and here we have our selection. Let's add the layer mask. See how nicely the selection is done. Let's put it on a different background to see everything is fine, and for that we'll add a solid color adjustment layer. Make it black and bring it below our subject. And now if we zoom in, you see we have a problem. There's a white outline around the leaf. This is basically the remaining pixels of the original background, which was white. This is called fringing. If you intend to use the subject on a lighter background, it will not create any problem, but if you are going to place it on a dark or bright color background, we have to remove it, and fortunately the process of removing it is pretty simple. We'll hold the controller command key and click on the layer mask to activate the selection, and then again go to select, and this time we click on modify and then contract. And here we have to type in the numbers of pixels we want our selection to contract. 2 will be enough in this case, and hit OK. Now if you can see, the selection is shifted inwards by 2 pixels. Then we take the brush tool, take the foreground color black and paint to hide the fringes. But why is it hiding our subject? Because the selection is of the subject and the fringes are on the outside of the selection now. So we need to paint on the outside, and for that we have to invert the selection. And how do we do that? We will press Command Shift and I if you are using a Mac, Control Shift and I for Windows to invert the selection. And now when we paint along the edges, the fringes are going away. You can continue to paint, or you can remove all the fringes in one go, and I'm sure every one of us will prefer that. To do that, we will have to fill up the selected area with black. Since black is our foreground color, we'll press Command plus Delete in Mac, Control plus Backspace in Windows, and all our fringes are gone. What? You don't believe me? Press Ctrl or Command D to deselect and see for yourself. And now we can place it on any color background. Let's take another image, this time on a darker background. And by the way, you can find the download links of all the images we are using today in the description below in case you want to follow along, or you can use it in any of your projects. We'll do the same steps as we did earlier. Open the color range dialog box and sample the color. Bring down the fuzziness to 0 because shoes here are very distinct. We don't have to worry about the color casting. And here's our selection. Let's add the layer mask. And like me, if you also forget to check on the invert option in the dialog box, then don't worry, we don't have to go back there. We just have to press Ctrl or Command I to invert the mask here and we'll have our shoes. Here again we have the fringing issues, but now we know how to deal with that. This time we have to increase the number of pixels here. We'll make it 5. I think we have to increase it a little bit more. To do that, make sure the selection is active and we go to Select menu and click on Modify, then Contract. And remember, we have already shrunk the selection by 5 pixels and now we will shrink it further by another 3 pixels so that the total value becomes 8 pixels. If you think the selection is pretty jagged and uneven, we can also smoothen it. For that, we have to go to Select menu and click on Modify, and this time we will click on the Smooth and enter the pixel value depending on the amount of smoothness we want. And it also depends on the subject you are working with. I will make it 2 here and hit OK. Once again, invert the selection by pressing Command Shift and I, Control Shift and I for Windows, and either use the brush tool or fill up the mask with black as we did earlier. If you have jagged edges like this, keep the layer mask selected, take the brush tool, change the foreground color to white by pressing the X key and paint like this to make the smooth edges. There is another way of smoothing the edges. Click on any selection tool here and right click on the layer mask and click on Select and Mask here. In the Select and Mask window, change the view to black and white, then increase the feather here. And now increase the contrast. Also adjust the Shift Edge slider here. I think we are good here. Click OK and you will notice that a new layer is created. We still have some amount of fringing on this shoe. Again activate the selection and we will contract it by some more pixels. Invert the selection and with the layer mask selected, take the brush tool, foreground color black, and we paint along the edges to hide behind the mask. Press Ctrl or Command D to deselect, and now we can place it on any other background. Okay, till now we have been using this technique on images where the subjects were solid and with clearly defined edges. But do you know that you can also use it in the selection of human subjects? But there are some limitations and we are going to discuss it now, and for that, let's get to our next image. Let's inspect our image. First, our background is pretty solid here and with a little bit of gradient. That shouldn't be a problem. And our subject is also in focus and also having a great contrast. But the area of concern here is her beautiful flowing hair. Though everyone in this world will appreciate and love to have a hair like her, especially me, but for us as Photoshoppers, it is an extremely challenging situation. Let me explain what I am trying to say. And this time we are going to click here to check on this option here, localized color clusters, and this will protect the area which are separated by other colors in between, and we will continue to paint. We can also adjust the range slider here. We have another exciting option here. We can see our mask real time. To access that option, we have to go to the selection preview here and click on white matte, and boom. And now we can continue with our process. We'll click OK and click on the Add Layer Mask button, and now you can see the problem I was talking about. This is happening because hairs are very thin structures and it will always take the color of its surrounding. Actually, this is not a problem and we can fix it by going into the select and mask window and use the refine edges and all the other tools available there. But my point is, if we have to do that, there is no point in taking so much of pain of using this technique. We could have simply took the quick selection tool and click on select subject and then use the select and mask to refine the edges. And that is the reason I always say there is no right or wrong ways of doing things in Photoshop. It's only the results that matter and the time and effort required to achieve those results. So is it that this technique can't be used on human subjects? Yes, it can be done, but in some scenarios like this one. I think you got the idea. We can use it in images where the subjects have either short hairs or the hairs are tied up like this. Let's go ahead with the process. We'll click to check on the localized color clusters and also check on detect phases. Take the sample and paint over these areas. Let's see this real time. And we'll continue painting. Hit OK. We'll add the layer mask. Let's put it on a white background and see. I think black will be better. And now we'll use the brush tool to hide this behind the mask. If you have to reveal some areas, just change foreground color to white by pressing the X key and paint over the areas. Let's make the mask black and white so that we can see clearly, and for doing that, hold the Alt or Option key and click on the layer mask. And now for the background, we will take the black foreground color, and for the subject, foreground color will be white, and we will continue to paint. For the edges, we can change the blend mode of the brush to overlay, and now you see it will paint only on the bright pixels and it is not going to affect the black areas. Let's go back to our original color by holding the Alt or Option key again and clicking on the layer mask. Now we'll take care of the fringes. And this time, since black is our background color, to fill up the selection with black, we have to press Option plus Delete on Mac or plus backspace in Windows. And our fringes are gone. For the fringes on the hair, first we'll add a new layer and clip it to our subject layer. Now whatever we do on this layer will be confined to the subject layer below it. Make sure the brush tool is active. We then hold the Alt or Option key and hover over the subject. You will notice that the cursor will change to an eyedropper, and now we can click on the particular neighboring area to take the color of that pixel, and then leave the Alt or Option key and paint on the edges of the hair and change the blend mode of the clipped layer to color. We'll repeat this process few more times to refine the edges of the hair. I think we need to change the blend mode. Let's select darken. I think now it's good. And we have our subject. With that, we have reached to the end of this video. Hope I was able to explain you the whole concept and the process of this technique. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. This way I will be able to know that my videos are of some help to you, and it keeps me motivated for making more such contents. Please leave your comments and share it with your friends, and for more such videos, please subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Pinterest and Instagram. Links are given in the description. Stay tuned, take care, goodbye, and keep nurturing your creative spirit, and I will see you in the next video.